menopause lunch. I don't know if you remember, Marion. And being 40, not really giving the thought about menopause, thinking, oh, that's a century away for me, I haven't got to worry about that. I remember leaving the event and I was mortified, like the conversations that were going on. And I remember distinctly saying to one of my best friends, don't worry, the doctors would have invented something by then to take it all away. It won't happen to our generation. And yet here we are. And obviously, seeing that conversation happen in the workplace is a major milestone, but at the moment they are conversations. What we need is action. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm not going to keep you too long because obviously we want to get to the panel, but just to say thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone who's joining us on the live stream. We will also be showing the video of the event subsequently on wearethecity.com as well. So I'm going to hand over to the fantastic Anne. Anne Golden joins us from Pan Pacific. So Anne, there she is.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you. And good morning. And I have to say, it fills my heart with joy just to see this room and all the fantastic people in it. And I actually feel that, you know, I have two girls, two daughters, and just to see this, I think, wow, they're probably not going to have to suffer in silence like a lot of other people have. So this is fantastic. I just wanted to, and Vanessa has given me this amazing forum just for 5 minutes, just to very quickly tell you something about Pan Pacific London. Now, whenever I'm given this opportunity, I never talk about the bricks and mortar because, as we all know, hotels and any venture is never about the actual physical product. It's always about the team and it's about the culture within the building. So when I was given this job, I was absolutely thrilled. It's a Singaporean company. I have to say, I went for my interview. They flew me on Singapore Airlines. I really didn't want to get off. At that point, I didn't care whether I got the job or not. It was just incredible. And what I saw there in Singapore was service that I felt was very different to what I'd seen in London. It was from the heart. If anyone in the audience is lucky enough to either come from Southeast Asia or have been to Southeast Asia, I think you'll know that service is really, really wonderful. And it filled me with absolute dread on the way back on the plane because I thought, oh my gosh, you know, how on earth am I going to replicate that in London? And I did a thing that I had never done before. I did a word cloud. I actually wrote down all of the experiences that I'd had in the month that I'd been in Singapore. Not actually what I did, but how they made me feel. And then a word cloud just literally throws the words that are used most often in the text. And the 4 words that came out were kindness, humility, attention to detail, which is actually more than just one word, and passion. And those 4 things, I thought, yeah, well, there's the roadmap. These are the people that, you know, I've got to hire for those 4 attributes. And if I do that, it doesn't mean to say that it's going to be exactly the same as Singapore, but it's going to be a lot closer than it would have been. And that's actually what we've done. So we've gone out and we've looked for people that understand kindness and understand humility. And actually, you know what? There were some people along the way that were absolutely incredible at what they did, and I was super tempted to take them because they're experts in their field, but they just weren't humble enough. And I think, unfortunately, as soon as you introduce what I like, and please, if there are any men in the room, please do not take this the wrong way, but we did tend to skew more towards females whilst we were actually looking for these attributes. And often I've been asked, why have you got, is it deliberate that you have an executive team that is 80% female? And I've said absolutely not. In my opinion, I think blended teams are the best. And when I say blended, I mean everything. Sexual orientation, you know, skin color, race, religion, everything. Blended completely, they are the best because you're getting all the different viewpoints. But we skewed towards women. Isn't that interesting? Through those attributes. So that was absolutely not deliberate. That was just the way that we hired, and I thought that was really quite interesting, but just wanted to always put the record straight on that I didn't deliberately go out on this mission just to find women to put on my team. And I think it doesn't do justice to the wonderful women that we've got by people thinking that either. So I just want to say, just personally, as I said, I started this little 5 minutes talking about the fact that I have 2 daughters and how incredible it is. But I think also it's about all of the allies that we have in our lives that are men as well. And I think that I've actually started dragging men into the conversation about menopause recently, and they've actually reacted really well. So it has not gone the way that I thought it would have done. So I just think it's wonderful also that I know that a lot of that's a lot of the way that you feel. But I am not an expert on this, except to say, you know, obviously, you know, this has happened to me as well, without any information or without without any celebrity endorsements, without all of the, you know, the wonderful brains in the room like we have today, being able to help. So this is amazing. Thank you so much for choosing Pan Pacific London. Thank you, Vanessa, for your support always. And I hope you have a wonderful time. And I hope to see you all again for leisure stays or anything else. And if you want to have a little look around after the end of the conference, we'll be able to arrange that for you. But thank you once again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And if you do get a chance, there's the infinity pool that looks over St Botolph's, over the road. It is an absolute dream. So the way this event's going to work, we're going to have 2 stories, so 2 lived experiences from the wonderful Pamela and Emma. We're then going to have a panel hosted by Sharon, where we're going to bring everyone together. But before that, we thought it would be fantastic to give you a kind of state of the nation. Where are we with menopause? And who better to do that than the wonderful organisation that is Wellbeing of Women? So I'm going to hand you over to Janet Lindsay, who's going to talk to us a little bit about kind of where we're at. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vanessa, for inviting me to do this today. And hello, and it's really wonderful to see so many of you here. So many enthusiastic and passionate people who want to know more about the menopause. So before I start, shall I tell you a little bit about Wellbeing of Women, and also apologise on behalf of our chair, Professor Dame Leslie Regan, who you were all expecting. She sends profuse apologies. I can't even tell you why she's not here, because it's top secret. But all will be revealed, we think, tomorrow. And I can't say more than that. But what I would say is look at the newspapers tomorrow. So I do send her heartfelt apologies for this, because she does not like letting things down, letting people down, letting you down. So you've got me. I will do my best. So I'm going to sort of tell you a little bit about Wellbeing of Women and about our Menopause Workplace Pledge. It's a whistle-stop tour. I've got 10 minutes. I know I can't go over. So if we start, we are the leading women's health charity, saving and changing the lives of women, girls and babies. And we do this through research, education and advocacy. Next slide, thank you. So last year, we launched our new 5-year strategy. We listened to women's voices. We spoke to our trustees, our team, our partners, our researchers, but most of all, we listened to women. And it became clear to us that we could do more to educate, and that we could do more and be allowed to advocate for women's health in society. So we changed our charitable activities a little. So we still do research, and we are the only women's health charity that funds research across a woman's life course. So that's starting with periods, menstruation, going right through until much later on life, when there's things like gynae cancers, can be osteoporosis. Because what a lot of people don't know is that most women will die of either heart disease or broken bones. Most people think they're going to die of cancer, but they're not. They're actually, most women will die of either heart disease or broken bones. So, and Leslie always tells a story that a lot of the geriatric departments in hospitals are full of older ladies who have fallen over going to the loo when they're in their 80s. They break their hip, and then they never come out. So it's really important that we all look after ourselves at every point along our life course. So if we go on to the next slide. So menopause is one of those things that we heard so much about when we were doing our strategic review. Actually, more than anything else, women wanted to talk about their symptoms because they felt that they had not been listened to. And this is not just in the last 20 years, this is hundreds of years that women don't think they've been listened to. I'm not going to go through the symptoms now because I think we've read an awful lot about them. We've got two wonderful lived experiences coming up. But it just showed us that there was something that we could do about it. And what women were really saying is that it was in the workplace that they were struggling so much because they didn't feel that they could talk about it and they didn't feel that they were getting the support. So if we go on to the next slide, thanks. So in the workplace, and this is research that has come from our own research, from Louise Newsome, and also from some of the wonderful evidence that's been collected by the government as well, which you can find on their website. So research shows that women struggle most in the workplace, that 25% have considered leaving or have left. All these figures we know, they reduce their hours, pass up promotions. Women make up nearly half the workforce, and women between the ages of 50 and 64 are the fastest growing demographic in the workforce. So with these terrible figures of women not feeling supported, yet it's the growth sort of market, we felt that there was something that we should be able to do. And hence our Menopause Workplace Pledge came to life. So if we go on to the, thank you. So what we decided to do was create a very simple pledge, something that all employers could look at, read, aspire to. We weren't asking them to put policies in place. We weren't providing the policies, because our view is that if it's your business, you know, and your staff know what they need more than anybody else. There are some pointers that wonderful organisations like Henpicked provide, and we provide all of those resources, free resources, on our website. So what we did was we created this 3-part pledge. So recognising, first of all, that it's menopause can be an issue in the workplace, talking openly, respectfully, and positively, something that I think all of us know hasn't always happened. And then finally, provide support and inform employees about menopause in the workplace. We launched it with a roundtable event. We persuaded our new patron, the Countess of Wessex, to join Leslie, and we decided that we would do it online rather than in real time, so that we could make sure that lots of people could see it and also take part. We got lots of different representation. So we had best practice from a number of organisations, Caroline Noakes, Carolyn Harris, because we are not a political organisation, so it was cross-party. We had a number of networks. Gabby Logan we invited because she's really passionate about encouraging men into the conversation. So we held this wonderful roundtable event, and then we launched to the media. And to date, we've now got over 1,000 employees signed up to the pledge and growing. I'm sure some of you will have seen the coverage last week. Actually, if we go on, I think it shows it. So last week we were at the civil service with 5 ministers and 5 leading civil servants. There, Sajid and Maria Caulfield. And then on the next slide, we were at the Speaker's House on Monday. There's Leslie with Sir Lindsay Hoyle. The House of Commons has also now signed our pledge. And yesterday I had a call with Estee Lauder and Amazon, and the list goes on. So what we're finding with the pledge, because we've had some interesting comments that perhaps we should have provided a policy. But it comes back to my point that what we can't do is we can't tell a company what they should do. It's really important that that HR teams and health and wellbeing teams work with the workforce and find out what actually is what they want. What do people want themselves? And then try and bespoke some form of support and policy. And that's where organisations like HENPIC come in, and they do it so well because they can bespoke these things. We can point them in the right direction. So you can see some of the coverage. Leslie and I have both been on BBC, on Today, on Sky, and it's growing. And we really feel that our pledge is making a difference. So what do I want from all of you? Well, I want, if you haven't signed, and actually I checked last night, there are only 2 or 3 organisations here who've signed the pledge, which is disappointing. So ladies and gentlemen, sign up. Get your companies to get involved, but support our campaign. Speak up. Normalise the conversations, because we all want to do it. It's far better to do it together. Partner with us. Put women's health at the top of your agenda in the workplace, but with friends and family. It's so important. Organisations like us cannot survive without the support of all of you. We literally cannot do it. This year we launched a £1.5 million grant. It's the biggest one ever. We have a lot of partners with Royal Colleges and different organisations, but we rely on donations from the general public and from corporate partners. And they're hard to come by. And women's health really should be at the top of the agenda. So please make sure it does. Join us for a challenge. Just give us a call and get involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So as you can gather, we really do have the who's who of the menopause world. So please do join that pledge. And just to some of the reports that have been alluded to, We Are the City created a menopause support page. So if you go onto our website, there is a whole page full of basically all different companies, resources and things like that that you can do, that you can find out a little bit more, and some of those reports that we kind of talk about as well. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the wonderful Pamela Hutchinson Obi, who's not had that far to walk from Bloomberg across the street. But Pamela's going to share her lived experience, and I'll let her tell you about a LinkedIn post that she probably penned without expecting the impact that actually happened thereafter. So, Pamela, over to you.
Thank you. I'll stand, but I may sit down at some point. But look, it's great to be here today. So I'm going to take you back almost 10 years. 10 years ago, I literally plunged straight into the menopause. And it happened because of a medical condition that I had, which then resulted in me having to have surgery. So one morning, I went into the hospital. I wasn't in the menopause, and by the afternoon, I was. There was no gentle sort of meander into the menopause with perimenopause. I didn't experience perimenopause. I went straight into menopause. And I remember waking up after the surgery, and my consultant, who, by the way, was amazing, and he came in, and he'd spent, by the way, quite a bit of time prior to my surgery actually preparing me for menopause. I have to say, no amount of preparation prepared me. But nevertheless, he was amazing, and he really walked me through it. And he said, Pamela, when you wake up, I'm going to make sure that you have a hormone replacement therapy patch under your skin so that you do not have the shock of going from not being in menopause to being in menopause. When I woke up, I felt pretty groggy. I felt pretty miserable. But I have to tell you, that little patch, oh, my God, amazing. It was under my skin for 3 months. That was as long as he could keep it in for. And he said, afterwards, we'll make sure that your GP continues to provide you with this patch under your skin. 3 months later, my GP said, I'm not going to give you one. And he said that based on, of course, all the research, which, of course, we all know now is flawed. I also had other medical conditions at the time that meant that he felt that it was too much of a risk to put me on HRT, and so he didn't. So having felt amazing for 3 months, I really did. I recommend it to everybody. I suddenly woke up and that was it. You can imagine every possible symptom I experienced. The hot flushes came. I was having hot flushes because I started to track how many I had in a day, anything upwards of 75 a day. On top of that, my joints were aching, which is why I might need to sit down. My joints were aching. I was really lucky I wasn't moody, which my husband's really pleased about, but I wasn't moody. But the hot flushes were dreadful. I forgot, it was ridiculous. I couldn't even remember the names of my children some days. You can imagine, I'm at the peak of my career going into the workplace and I can't remember anything. Brain fog was dreadful. I still have a little bit of that even with the HRT. It was horrendous. I felt miserable. It was definitely impacting my mental health, put it that way. I considered perhaps stepping down and not doing the level of job that I had because I just didn't know whether I would be on a stage and suddenly forget something. I didn't know if I would be in a board meeting and then forget why I was even in there. It was really quite awful. And this continued on for 6, 7 years. Can you imagine? I kept going back to my doctor, pleading with my doctor, please put me on HRT. Didn't want to do it. So I just figured out other ways of getting through the menopause, therapies, vitamins, changed my diet, and some of those things helped. Even those little, I don't know, I'm going to say this. Does anybody know those little, they're like magnets you stick on your knickers? Right? I can't even what they're called. I remember actually being in a meeting and one of those fell out. I'm serious. And I sort of gently kicked it under the desk. I tried those. I have to say, it did work for a little while, but I don't know. Maybe I imagined it worked, but it worked for a little while. So here I am. So, of course, I'm at work. People are seeing that I'm not, firing on all cylinders. My team is seeing this. To be honest, with my team, who I trust, I was never going to hide what was happening to me. So I would share with the people in my team what was going on, and they were amazing. And they all said, right, we're going to surround you, we're going to protect you, we're going to have your back. And so they were great, honestly. If there were days where I was I just can't remember something, somebody else would step up and do that presentation for me. Sometimes I'd be in meetings and they'd be slyly slipping me notes just to remind me who was in the room, what I was going to say next. I was always somebody who could speak just ad lib, as I'm doing today. It's easy because I'm telling my story. But I was the person that would always walk onto a stage, never have notes, speak freely. That does not happen anymore. I can't do it. Unless I'm telling my story, it's easy to do that. But I have to have notes now. So my team were great. They supported me. But I started just sharing it with different people that I would that I would sort of interact with in the workplace. And one day, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was in having a coffee, and one of my colleagues, Paula, who sat in the audience, bumped into me, and we started having a chat, and we started talking about the menopause. And we both said, we should do something about this. And I started sharing my experiences. I probably frightened the hell out of you, right? Because Paula was just sort of starting to go into perimenopause. And it was an interesting conversation, but we both sort of said, yeah, let's think about this. Let's think about how we can sort of raise this as a profile at Bloomberg. Anyway, over time, Paula and others started with what we call an IB chat, an instant Bloomberg message chat. And we started a little group called Hot Flush? Feeling Flushed. Feeling Flushed. And it was really small, and there were a few women on it from London, and now it's global, right? We've got women all over the world. I think we've got a few men in there as well. So it started very slowly with that. Then we followed that by what we do at Bloomberg. We call them inclusion dialogues, and that's where we bring people together around sensitive topics to have a dialogue. And we started talking about menopause in the organisation. We started talking with our leaders about this as well. And we started campaigning for more support for women around menopause. And it was last year, I think it was last year anyway, that as I'm starting to have more and more conversations with people like Paula and other people across the organisation, I started to just reflect back on my experiences going through menopause and just how awful it was. And by the way, I was not on HRT last year. I've only just got it after a lot of campaigning and having to pull in my consultant into that conversation. But at the time, I was sort of reflecting on my experiences. And so I almost started a little journal. What it was like to have gone through it, the experiences that I had, how I was even still feeling right now. And as I was having this sort of jotting this down, the head of comms and I were having a conversation about this, and she said, I was telling her that I was sort of making a journal, and she said, Pamela, I think you should do a blog. And I was like, not so, like it's one thing sharing it with people I trust and I know, something completely different, putting it out there for the entire world to see that I haven't really all got it together. But she said, well, think about it anyway. So I started writing this thing, and actually I found it incredibly cathartic. And she said, this is amazing. We need to put this on LinkedIn. So I went home to my husband and I said, do you think I should do this? And he said, well, let me read it first. He read it, and he did cut some things out, actually. There was one thing, I can tell this audience, of course, it is being live streamed, so I don't know why I'm saying I'll tell you, because I'm telling the world now. But there was one sentence I put in there, which was around the fact that, you know, I really enjoyed the fact that we were able to work from home during the pandemic, because with all my hot flushes, you know, I was so uncomfortable. And it was great because, of course, you know, you're on Zoom, people can only see you from here up, right? And there I am sitting in my knickers, no trousers or anything. And I'd written about, it's great, I don't have to wear anything from the chest down. My husband said, no, you really don't need to tell everyone. They don't need to imagine what goes on under your desk. But anyway, I was very open in this blog that I wrote. And so we decided that we would put it out there. And I have to tell you, it took a lot of courage for me to do that. I spoke to a number of my girlfriends who said, don't do it. Don't do it, because whatever people think of you now will change when they read that. You come across as so confident, so together. People are going to wonder, like, who are you if they read that? And they said, it's not going to help your career, don't do it. And I know they meant well, and I know they wanted to protect me. And on one level, I actually believe them too. I think, I don't know, is this going to change people's view of me? The day that I came to publish it on LinkedIn, I sat in front of my desk, and I was in the office that day, and it was ready to go. All I had to do was press that button to publish it. And I sat over that button for about, 2.5 hours. And I started crying, and I was getting myself into a right pickle. And one of my male colleagues who was sat near me, he said, what are you doing? Like, press it already. Just get it done. And I was like, this is a big deal for me. Like, I'm putting a lot of myself out there, and I don't know if it's going to come back to bite me. I have to admit, at the time, I was also worried about whether or not other women wouldn't appreciate me writing about all of our secrets. You know, there are so many stereotypes about women. Do we want to add another one? And I was, what am I doing? Anyway, he said to me, Pamela, you're going to inspire so many women by sharing your story. There are so many women that are suffering in silence. And if you go out there, you're breaking that taboo, and you need to do it. You're a senior woman. And he said, and you're a black woman. There are very few black women at your level who are sharing the experiences of menopause. And by the way, women of colour suffer the symptoms of menopause much more severely than white women. So I remembered that I have to live authentically as a global head of D&I, and that I am a role model. And I pressed the button, sat down, and went, and I was overwhelmed with the amount of response, positive response that I got. Women coming up, trying to reach out to me, wanting to talk to me. I've been speaking about menopause all over the world since I put that blog out there. And even though when I put the blog out there, I still had not got menopause under control, it was just a wonderful, it felt like I was part of a community of other women, and we were, it was just amazing. More recently, in the last 2 months, I have now got a HRT badge, sat actually on this side of my bottom. And I'm beginning to start to feel a little bit more like the woman I was before I had the surgery, and it's amazing. Since then, we have, and we'll talk about it probably in the panel, we've gone on at Bloomberg to provide even more support for women going through the menopause. But you don't have to suffer in silence. There is a whole community of women here to support you and help you through and guide you, provide you with information. There are more and more consultants and doctors now who understand how the impact of menopause and are prepared to support you. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand over to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. So transparent and honest. And I remember reading that post and seeing, I kind of never knew what went on before it, but seeing that post kind of blow up on LinkedIn and just you inviting everyone to have the conversation with you, and that has continued. So thank you so much for that. Next, it gives me a great honour to welcome Emma Campbell, who is a speaker, she's an author, she's a columnist, she's an Instagram sensation, but because she lifts us all. So Emma's going to give you a little bit about her lived experience around the menopause. Emma, I will let you tell your story.
Hi everybody, it's so lovely to be here, and it's already I feel so moved by Pamela's story. There are actually quite a few comparisons in that we both found ourselves in a medically induced menopause, possibly for different reasons and with different experiences that followed. But the thing that struck me in the last few minutes is how actually I'm here today talking about my menopause experience, but I haven't in any way really acknowledged it or processed it in amongst everything else that's gone on for me in the last 10, 12 years. So to go back, I was diagnosed with breast cancer 12 years ago, so 2010. I was 38. I was a single mum to a 6-year-old boy and 6-month-old triplets, so kind of, huge amount going on. And obviously, very large tumour, full-on works of every bit of treatment going was thrown at me, so chemo or, surgery. And I was told that my periods would stop, which they did. So, and because of my age, but obviously not even 40 at that point, my oncologist was like, I had 6 months of chemo ahead of me. Your periods might come back. They might not, who knows? And again, that was the kind of wonderful oncologist, by the way, but that was the extent of the kind of conversation. And again, when you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis, that's the least of your worries, whether or not your periods return. And sure enough, they did, a year or two, maybe a year or so after the full-on treatment ended. And then life carried on for me. I was diagnosed with secondary breast cancer at the end of 2014. So found myself back on chemotherapy again. Again, the period stopped. But at that point, I then became a patient for life. So I've been on some form of treatment ever since. After that first kind of push of chemo and getting me back into a stable place, I was then told that the most important thing with my cancer being very, very hormonally driven, estrogen positive, was that, everything had to be shut down. So I began taking, being given, rather, and if anyone has ever seen a needle, a Zoladex needle, it's something quite, it's a sight to behold. It's a giant, very, very big needle. So I, for the last 5 or 6 years, have had a monthly injection in my stomach to basically keep my ovaries sound asleep. But again, just what I'm realizing this morning is there was very, very, very little discussion around it, absolutely no preparation, because again, you're a cancer patient. Survival, living, staying alive is the priority. And for me, my mental health and the kind of all-consuming obsession with whether I was going to stay alive and be here for my children, that was all that I could see. But in terms of, I'll never forget, and a bit like Pamela was saying, I'll never ever forget, and it must have been, maybe it was within a few days of the first Solidex injection. I remember sitting on the phone on the side of the bed to my sister, sort of wailing, sobbing, feeling like I'd lost my mind. It was that instant and immediate. And we kind of almost joke about it, my sister and I, because we both had those moments in life where we kind of call it the sliding down the wall moment, where kind of almost you just collapse on every level. And it was that sounds very dramatic, but it was such an extreme psychological sort of mental plummet. It was almost like an elevator of, just going from functioning sort of normality, stability, to just plunging into the darkest hole. And it felt very, very chemical. And for me, all along, the psychological aspects of being plunged into a menopause have always been much more profound than the physical. So physically, hot flushes have actually never been too bad. The kind of fatigue is something that I still struggle with to this day. The kind of feeling of not sort of aging overnight, but you just suddenly feel there is that sort of dehydrated feeling. My libido, my marriage, I was only two years into my, very early on in my marriage, and my libido just disappeared, which was, again, not life or death when you're thinking of cancer survival, but it had a really sort of, not a devastating impact on our relationship, but it altered things. And again, did we deal with that? Did we talk about that? I'm not sure. So that was 6 years ago. So I had my last Solidex injection last week. I'm very, very used to it now. I kind of know that 2 or 3 days later, I'll have a little bit of a weep and a little bit of a sort of wobbly day. And it'll be like, oh, yeah, God, what's wrong with me? Oh, right, Solidex was on Wednesday, okay. So I'm very, very used to that. But I think what I think is so important is that where do these, it's these conversations are so crucial. And I think for someone like me who's had so many sort of big dramas to contend with, I think even now, I feel like 5-6 years on, maybe now's my time to really look at and process this experience for myself. I'm not from a corporate background. I've sort of, writing, kind of cancer treatment, looking after kids, speaking work, which is wonderful, but kind of very much based at home and not at all from a corporate background. I worked for a wonderful company for years who were incredibly supportive on so many levels in an admin role, a part-time role that very much suited me as a parent. But the effect on my confidence, even in a low-pressured role, I was kind of on reception, greeting people in a busy reception. It was quite paralysing. Again, I wasn't standing in front of groups of people. I wasn't, leading departments but I would sit as someone walked into reception, and I would feel a blind panic of, I know I've seen that. I know I should know who that person is, and I do not. And it's almost like it's stage fright almost. And that's something that I still, that I've got used to. I think you just get used to struggling with the brain fog, the memory lapses, the cognitive impairment. But unfortunately for me, there are no options. HRT isn't an option at all. There's very, very little. I have to avoid any kind of herbal. I have to be very careful of any alternative remedies that I might take. So it's just something that I've put somewhere in the back of my mind that I'm alive, just got to live with that, and I think this is, and, as we know, and this isn't a conversation about cancer, but the diagnosis, 1 in 2, and breast cancer, as we know, is something that so many women are touched by. And so many of those breast cancer diagnoses are hormone positive and led by. So, you know, it is I am not in the minority at all. So I think, and it was interesting, the feeling from my oncology team, every so often when I bring up the conversation of, do I still need to have these injections? Do I, you know, I'm in my 50s now, do I still need to have this? Oh, we don't want to rock the boat. We don't, you know, you're in a good place, you're in remission, you're stable, let's not rock the boat. Because actually, you know, I'm thinking, okay, fine. And then I put it somewhere and I just go on and I put the milk in the oven, or I look at the kids and go, what? And, you know, my daughter, and it's interesting, my daughter's 12 and she's on the brink of, you know, puberty, and I'm sure you know, we're all ready for her. You know, I've got her period pack sort of in my room ready for when we're having all those conversations. But one thing that we're locking horns about at the moment, and she's obviously raging with her hormones and I'm sort of like this all the time, is she gets very, very angry and frustrated with me at my lack of memory. I don't understand why you don't remember these things. It's so easy. And I'm trying to say, look, Ella, I need lists. I need lists. Whether it's getting you new socks from Primark, whether it's remembering to pay for that school trip, whatever it is, I need that list. And she's, obviously as a 12-year-old, she struggles to really appreciate that. But I'm having to kind of, and it's okay. So that sounds like a tiny example, but I'm trying to kind of come up with techniques and ways that I can just incorporate into my slightly bonkers daily life with all my ups and downs. So really, I think what I am recognizing, and these conversations are just game-changing, and they will be, and this is just the start, as I'm sure you will agree. But actually, there are so many of us who just have no choice but to just put it somewhere. And in the scheme of things, it's quite low down on the list. But actually, when you stop and think, gosh, you know, this has had a much bigger impact on me than I might have realised and appreciated. So I feel today, thank you, because even though we haven't even got halfway through this morning's event, I've got a lot to think about and process. And actually, and I'm going to finish now, as wonderful as my team was, as wonderful as my care was, at no point was I told, it was just, yeah, your periods will stop. I was not given any hand. I was given the most wonderful care in every other way, and I continue to be given the most wonderful care on every level. But in terms of the menopause, in terms of me being switched off overnight with no gradual decline, like you say, no, you know, the estrogen tapers off over a period of years for the majority of women. For those of us who don't have that luxury, it is a switch going from on to off. It is instant. And I have to say, at no point was I given any preparation for that whatsoever. And that isn't a criticism to any of my wonderful team at the Marsden or the hospital I used to be at. But wow, that's made me think. And that's something I think I will feed back to the wonderful care, the team that I see every 3 weeks for my ongoing targeted chemo. I think it's really, really important, because that would have made a huge difference. Instead, I felt, on top of everything else, that I was losing my mind, that I had to live with a low-level depression, that this was just something I had to put up with because I was lucky enough to still be here. So that's it. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Em. I'm now going to hand over to Sharon Vibert, who is Director at Hempicked, who's going to tell you a little bit about what they're doing and then also lead us into our panel. So, Sharon, over to you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Thanks for having us. And I'm absolutely delighted to be facilitating the panel. And what's really interesting is, following on from the conversations and the stories, is about the human element. And that we are enabling conversations here that are for human beings. And in the interest of transparency, I need my notes, because I'm a surgical menopauser as well. And I need to keep this succinct. And if I don't have my notes, we'll be here probably till about 5 o'clock, because I'm so passionate about women leading their best lives at work. I was one of those stats that left my job because my symptoms were so bad. Everything that you've spoken about completely resonates with me. And it's our mission to change hearts and minds. And that's why doing the job that I do, it's so lovely to see faces in the room that I know, organisations that are doing great things. So I'm now going to look at my notes because I can feel myself going off at a tangent already. So we're on a mission to really change the culture of menopause at work, because we know the stats are poor. We know that 1 in 10 have left their jobs. We know that only 20% of organisations are doing something tangible. But what we want to do is celebrate and really recognise what good looks like. So I want us to think about the way that we think and feel about the menopause. If we do that together today, then we're absolutely going to change the ongoing culture within organisations. It's really important that we think about how to prevent our talent leaving. We need to think about attracting really great employees as well. And that is where we create a culture that menopause can be talked about openly, and that it's actually business as usual for all employers going forward. And I'm so delighted to let you all know that in September, 22nd of September, we will be hosting the first global menopause-friendly awards, celebrating accredited menopause-friendly employers. How amazing is that, to think about all those great organisations that are doing brilliant work coming together on a dance floor? When has that ever happened? And somebody actually said to me the other day, it's going to be an historic event. When have we ever had an event like that, where we can bring employers together to celebrate, a chance to come together and celebrate best practice? And that's what we do. We celebrate what good looks like. We use employers' experience to be able to demonstrate to those that haven't maybe started on their journey what is possible. Menopause can have an impact on us all, and we really need to think about what is the lived experience of somebody going through menopause at work. What is the cost, not only to the employee, but also to the employer as well? What is the cost to the individual's career, their pay and pension gap, and also what is the cost to your business? And I'm going to be quiet now because I really want to get onto the panel, if that's okay. But I really hope that some of you will really come and think about joining us at our awards, because I want to be there and celebrate what good looks like, where you can all come together and talk about what you are doing as an organisation. So, shall we have our panel? Thank you. I've got more notes. So I'd just like to introduce the panel. Obviously, the three ladies sitting next to me, you know. But I'd also like to introduce you to Lee Chambers, who is the co-founder of Essentialise, and also to Sam Simister, who is the founder of Gen M. And actually, Sam, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. So Gen M, we know, is the menopause partner for brands and organisations. And you've got lots of organisations that are on board, which is brilliant. So can you share some examples with us around, what the collaboration looks like with Gen M?
Absolutely. Is this on? Can you hear me? Thank you, Sharon. Hello, everyone. It's really lovely to be here. So, yes, I'm Sam, and Gen M is the menopause partner of brands and organisations. Well, why did we set Gen M up for that? Well, the majority of brands and organisations employ this great audience that we're talking about, but they also serve this audience. And that is why we felt that by bringing a wonderful collective together of responsible businesses, we could drive real change at pace. And in 8 short months, we've now got over 62 incredible brands on board. It's a UK pilot, and with the success that we've had, we do intend to take it globally. So it's really exciting to see, as I say, in a relatively short period of time, if not a bit overwhelming, the amount of engagement that we've had. And it's just such a privilege. So for those of you that know me, I am a bit of a nerd. I'm a biochemist and I love research. And everything that we do at Gen M is underpinned by research. 2 years ago, we commissioned some statistically significant research, understanding how women in midlife were feeling. And the report, which I'm really happy to share with all of you, if you haven't seen it, is so compelling. It's illuminating. It doesn't make for great reading, but it underpins everything that we do, and it gave us our business rationale. And the stats are, as I say, pretty incredible, but not in a good way. 87% of women feel invisible and underserved by society in general and brands and organizations. 97% are demanding more from brands and organizations. I think it's something like, I haven't got my notes, Sharon, I'm definitely taking a leaf out of your book, but 92% are really tired of being unrepresented. They don't recognize themselves through advertising or how organizations, and by that, people that are offering services, it's not just fast-moving consumer goods. So this data really gave me and my co-founder Heather Jackson the impetus to do something about it. We talk to our brands all of the time and our partners, and they are really struggling to get real momentum internally to make a difference. So again, I thought, let's understand why. And we did some more research, understanding across our partner base, but also much more broadly, what's stopping people in business having really good conversations to normalize the situation, not just for employees, but also externally. And again, I wasn't really surprised. Over 45% of people said, this is an HR issue. It sits in D&I. And I thought, well, it doesn't just sit in HR, actually. Everybody is affected. And the other stat that really made me sit up and think, we know that the average age of menopause is a lot more than just, perimenopause. The whole experience is a lot more than just 1 or 2 years. And the majority of respondents in business thought that this only lasts for a couple of years. So if they're thinking that, who on earth is going to be looking at this strategically, whether it's for the well-being of the women in the workplace and those in transition, but for your consumers and for your audience outside of the workplace? So I just wanted to give a little bit of context as to what data we gather so that we can then make proper interventions or give our partners useful interventions to have the right conversations. So to answer Sharon's question, we, again, in a really short space of time, are seeing some fantastic steps and some fantastic changes. So I make no apology, I gave Boots a really hard time. When I went through my menopause, and there are over 48 symptoms, depending on who you ask, but there's a lot of symptoms, right? I put perimenopause into Boots because I thought Boots are going to have some answers to my dry skin, my frizzy hair, my running mascara, all of the stuff that we all look for when we're a bit hot and bothered. And I got a big fat zero search. And that frustration just got bigger and bigger as I put it into Marks and Spencer's. I put it into Next. I put it into Unilever. And I'm very, very solution focused. I'm also a board director at Innocent Drinks. And I thought, I'm not going to get angry. I'm going to do something. So when we spoke to Boots, I gave them a real hard time. And one of the things that's happened through their partnership with Gen M, if you put perimenopause now into the Boots e-commerce engine, you then get an opportunity to shop by symptom. I mean, how bloody brilliant is that? I mean, well done, Boots. I'm so, if I could stop there because, you know, my job is done, but it's not, obviously. But that's one example. And again, there's so much more that Boots are doing. They are so proactive now that they have understood what their employees and their consumers are looking for. Marks and Spencer, exactly the same. I can't share too much because it hasn't happened yet, but we are working with the board director who looks after in-store servicing for women. And we are hoping that we are going to be able to demonstrate to shoppers at M&S that M&S are seeing them and they are signposting them, because that's the other stat. All women want, all I want is better signposting, so that when I go into Holland & Barrett or M&S, my brain fog doesn't take over and I can find what I need in a few minutes rather than a couple of hours. So M&S, Holland & Barrett, they're all doing really good things. Holland & Barrett have just launched an amazing app so that we can all go on that map and understand by our symptoms what to look for and where to find it. The Royal Mail, I really enjoy these guys. Through our survey and through our report, which we called the Opportunity Report, I had the pleasure of taking their board through some of these stats. They suddenly realized that their departments weren't talking to each other in an effective way because everyone thought the problem sat with HR. What they have now done is that they've put a cross-functional group together, and they are now working with their procurement team to better understand the textiles technology within the partners that they have that make the uniforms for their posties. They've just launched a breathable uniform for their female posties because they know that these women get hot and bothered and they need that textiles technology built into their uniforms. And they're now collaborating with our retail partners to see what we can do for those that work in retail. Now,
Sam, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Am I rattling on? I'm sorry.
So much.
Thank you.
It's so difficult not to be passionate, and I really don't want to cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No, please do, because others need to speak.
Yeah.
But there's lots of good examples. Happy to share more.
Amazing.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Thanks. And I think just following on from that really quickly, talking about strategy. So Menopause Friendly is about committing to a strategy long term, to embed menopause into a workplace culture. So talking about tangible takeaways, I've got it here. Look, everybody loves a prop, but please reach out to me for our audit. It asks some really key questions. Things like, do you have a culture? But also, do you have guidance or policy? Have your managers and HR, but also your occupational health teams had training, for example? Does your organisation communicates? But more than that, what about your facilities? Talking about workwear, how easy is it? This is all about, it's not just about a desk fan, but how easy is it to actually get a desk fan? You know, do you have to fill it out in triplicate? Do you have to, you know, talk to several people? Or could you just go to a cupboard and help yourself so you don't have to necessarily discuss that with someone that you feel a little bit uncomfortable with? But more importantly, if we're going to have committed and accredited menopause-friendly employers, it's very much about thinking what is the lived experience, but also providing tangible evidence as well. So just some tangible takeaways. Now, Pamela, could you tell us, just very briefly, a little bit about what you've been doing at Bloomberg? Because I think it's always good and inspiring to hear from organisations. I can tell you every day, you know, about what we do, but it's more about what you as good employers are doing.
Thank you. I'll give it back to you. I mentioned when I was standing up here that we started a sort of an instant chat, which is a bit like a WhatsApp chat, I suppose. And that's great because now we have a community of individuals at Bloomberg, women across the globe, some men as well, and we're able to support one another. We put all sorts of things in the chat from, you know, consultants you should be speaking to, books to read, things to watch on TV, vitamins, mineral, the whole lot. And that's been really helpful. So that's one thing. We've got a community and people know where they can go if they want support. We do these, what we call inclusion dialogues. We've been doing quite a number of those, and we've done them across the organisation on menopause. And the purpose of that is to start a conversation. We've all talked about how important conversations are. And we continue to invest in those types of conversations, raising awareness. We don't just keep it at Bloomberg, though. We open it up to our clients and to people across the industry. It's really important for us at Bloomberg that it doesn't stay as just a conversation in-house, but it's a conversation that we are helping to lead across the city. That's another thing. Funnily enough, it's not just about a desk fan, but I can tell you they're really important. A few years ago, we have this system at Bloomberg. You put in a ticket online for whatever you want. I have to say this system is amazing. And I remember putting in tickets saying I need a desk fan and coming back and saying, well, what do you want one of those for? This was several years ago. Now you put in a request for a desk fan and you get a desk fan. So that's really important. The other thing that we've done is we've worked with our healthcare provider Vitality, and we are now able to have menopause coaches are available to our employees. There's a whole host of information through Vitality. You can get to see a consultant. So we've made it very, we've ensured that anyone going through the menopause at Bloomberg has the appropriate support that they need in order to be able to continue to thrive in the workplace. We're continuing to do even more as we go forward, but those are some of the key things that we've been doing.
Thank you. That's really, really inspiring. And I think support groups are absolutely key at work. So congrats if anybody in the room here is, I know we had a conversation earlier about support groups. So, it's that starting those conversations from the grassroots up, shared experiences can just make such a difference. So coming on to you, Lee, can you just tell us why is it important to get men involved in the conversation at work?
Yeah, so it's so important. I think there's a number of different reasons why. Just a little bit about myself. I work in wellbeing strategy. I'm a psychologist by background, and a lot of what I do is helping companies to implement wellbeing effectively, how to measure it. And through a lot of employee facilitation, through a lot of discussions, the stories that I've heard, what women have been through in the workplace, really have ignited my own passion. And, on that kind of male allyship journey, what I've come to realise is it's incredibly important to also have other men on that journey as well. So from an organisational perspective, when it comes to gender equity initiatives and interventions, they are 6 times more likely to be effective and gain momentum if men are involved. That makes quite a compelling business case. If men were actually leading those initiatives, I'd love to know how much that would amplify as well. So from that perspective of men within organisations, they might not be directly impacted, but 51% of the population is, and 100% of individuals will be indirectly impacted by menopause throughout their lifetime. And it's a journey, it's not an issue. So we actually need to start to look at how we support that from that male perspective. Additionally, when we're kind of looking within an organisation, what we actually need to consider are what are the barriers, because for the many women that I've spoken to, the overarching feeling was that a little bit of support, a little bit of safety to talk about it, and not being invalidated continually, because they'd faced that in the health service over and over again. And then to be told by, male leaders, male managers, that you're oversharing, I don't want you to talk about it, or to be completely repelled. And that feeling was worse sometimes than their actual symptoms. So from my perspective, when we're actually looking, how do we engage men in this conversation? Well, it actually starts with that wider piece about this isn't a woman's issue. It's a people's challenge. And we all need to be able to come together to find solutions and build that awareness and education together. Men can sometimes be quite challenging to engage in topics that they don't feel particularly comfortable about speaking about. But a massive part of my work is to actually get men to think about becoming a little bit uncomfortable but getting comfortable with that discomfort and being able to have those conversations, but massively to create spaces where people are listened to and heard, where you don't need to become a menopause expert, but a little bit of awareness and education can just give you a chance to be that support, to actually look and consider how you can create some spaces and to start to foster psychological safety within a workplace. So these challenges can be spoken about. It's such a big thing from an organisational perspective as well. As we start to look at, some statistics that I've seen, it can cost an organisation up to 217% of a senior woman's salary to replace her and get someone up to speed. If that doesn't make a compelling business case, I don't know what does. But as we look to obviously continue to engage male allies across, the whole gendered health challenges that we face, from menstruation through to menopause and everything in between, we need to start to honestly look at how men can become compelling voices in that conversation. I found, especially for men within my age range, late 30s, there's a lot of curiosity there about how they can actually start to shake some of society's pillars that are long beyond time. We need to change those structures, and we need to be able to see how we can start to dismantle those. That requires men to be on board, and that does require men to start to consider how they can advocate for more than themselves.
Amazing. Would you like to do drop mic? I think that's absolutely incredible, and I would encourage everyone to find your male allies within your organisation. Reach out to your male colleagues. Some of the best training that I've ever done has been to a room full of men, and they are really engaged and they want to learn, and we need to be brave enough to say, we need to have a conversation about this, but I'd like you to support me, and these are the reasons why. And I think having male allies, male champions, advocates within organisations is brilliant. I remember a young male manager came to one of our sessions and said, I really don't know why I'm here. I'm in my early 20s, and 2 of the blokes in my team are in their early 20s. I don't know what am I doing here? And after the session, he actually said, I'm going home to buy my mum some flowers. And you're right, it's that small amount of awareness that can make such a big difference. And engaging senior male allies as well is so important. So encourage everybody to reach out on that. Right, next question. Emma, I'm going to come over to you. I know that you've been doing some research amongst your community. Could you just give us a little bit of insight with regards to that?
So I did some Instagram good old Instagram stories and asking the question, I asked my followers how comfortable they have or haven't felt about discussing some of what they're experiencing with the menopause to an employer or a colleague at work. So 33% said yes, they did feel supported in the workplace, but 67% said they didn't. I'm just going to share some of the comments that I got and some of the feedback. It's a really mixed bag, so there's some real positives, but there's also clearly quite a way to go. I work in construction, and they've been so good. They've worked so hard to understand the challenges women face and how they can help. It's sad that I find it shocking that such a male-dominated workplace is working at this, but it makes me very proud. Another comment. I worked in a Canary Wharf office 10 years ago throughout my menopause. Sharing any of my symptoms would have been seen as a weakness. I suffered in silence. So hopefully there's been progress since then. There were 2 comments from people who work for various NHS trusts, so I won't mention the trust, but one person said, my support from NHS blank while going through the medically induced menopause was non-existent. In fact, I experienced harassment and bullying. My NHS trust has a fabulous support network. However, even though I have an incredibly supportive male line manager, I still feel like I can't tell them too much because they think differently about me and that I can't cope or do my job. Once you tell people you have an issue, they look at you differently. And then the last one, I work in a primary school and we have a menopause policy. I feel listened to and valued, which is so important at a time in your life when you feel like you're losing your grip on everything. And I think that point about, even though we might feel that the space is there, we still hesitate, don't we? We still hesitate to, even though that door is open, to really kind of open up and say, I'm really struggling. Because we do all worry about how then we're going to be perceived, you know. So that was, and I know, you know, in terms of social media, and particularly in my case, just solely kind of Instagram, there's a huge community now. There's an incredible community of women who are advocating for the menopause and kind of sharing their stories and really pushing for change. So, I mean, that is a world you can step into. And, you know, I often describe it as, certainly in terms of the cancer community, you know, you can kind of curtain twitching. You don't have to be a voice. You might not feel that you want to share your story, but certainly by observing other people's and taking what you need and want can be, you know, incredibly helpful.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's right. And I think when we look at the training element of what we do as a business, it's so important to include everyone in the conversation for that reason, so that you can have, it's an enabler, isn't it? That somebody, you know, if you want to go and talk to your manager, how empathetic is that manager going to be if they've not had the awareness piece? And the feedback that we get from the training that we run, you know, it's a rainbow moment. It has been life-changing. These are comments from men as well, because as you say, you know, 51% is going to go through the menopause directly, but it's the indirect effect. And if we don't understand as women what we're experiencing ourselves, how can we have a conversation with somebody at work particularly and explain to them how we're feeling and expect them to understand? So actually taking it away from the personalised and using training, awareness training, to be able to help that cultural change is so, so important. But talking about individuals, what can individuals do to help them through this transitional stage?
I think the most important thing is to be brave, actually. Be brave and go and talk to the doctor. We would say write down everything that's going on with you over a period of 3 months. And those symptoms, because I have to say, Pamela, you picked this up and you were talking, or maybe it was Emma, but if you drop off the cliff, as you will do with the medically induced one, which listening to both your stories sounds horrendous and hideous and horrible, and without proper support, which you had initially but then didn't, Pamela, for 10 years, and you don't have, and all the rest of it, you really need to educate yourself, look things up. Everything is out there. I'm Louise Newsom, who many of you will have heard of. Her website, the Menopause Charity, has some great resources on there. 48 symptoms and growing. It's now 52. So, but you know, she has done an enormous amount of work in breaking down barriers, and she came to our first event at Linklaters in 2016, I think. So look at her website, but make a note of your symptoms, because when you really think about them, they're likely to be more than one. And go to the doctor and be open, be honest, but also let them be open and honest with you, because HRT is being put up as the sort of panacea for everything. And it works for many women and people, but it doesn't work for everybody, and it's not suitable for everybody. So it's important that you do go and talk to your GP or the practice nurse or your healthcare professional. Some pharmacists are very good, so I would do that. There is a lot of work going on in the NHS at the moment around menopause. We're sitting on a number of different committees, so they're looking at better training, more training. But I think the most important thing is be open, talk about your situation with your friends, with your family, with the workplace. Go and visit your doctor. Go and visit your GP. And if you don't get what you want to start with, then go back. Go and talk to somebody else in that practice. It's not, you don't just go once and feel dismissed. That's absolutely not what should happen. So if that does happen, step back and then make another appointment and go and speak to somebody else, because there will be support. Menopause is a very personal thing. No one person has the same symptoms than somebody else. So it's really important that you do go and seek help if you need it. And if you're one of the lucky people who doesn't, then that's great. But be supportive of colleagues, and talk with your families. Anybody who's got children, make sure they know about it. And then things will change. Normalise the conversation, I think, is the most important thing, so that menopause isn't feared.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And just leading on from that, as we bring this to a close, very fortuitously, there's a large clock over there with the time on. And we've got 5 minutes. But can we just have like a golden nugget takeaway in terms of either what somebody can do to help themselves or what a business can do? But we've literally got about 10, 15 seconds each. So Sam, do you want to start off with a golden nugget?
You come back to me at the end. I want to think about it.
Of course. Lee, you got a golden nugget?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is in your business, you will have people who supported their partner through it and supported colleagues through it. Their case studies, especially if they are male, are incredibly powerful in creating ripples that create the wave of change that we need.
I agree with everything that Lee said. Be inclusive. Bring everybody into the conversation.
Down my golden nugget. The more we speak our truth and express our needs and vulnerabilities in the workplace, the more we give permission for others to do the same. Strip back status, authority, image. Underneath, we're all sharing so many of the same experiences. It takes confidence at a time when you might be feeling at your most vulnerable, but by honouring ourselves, we really can set the wheels in motion for change.
For those who are sat in this room who are in organisations that haven't started thinking about this topic or doing the work, you are more empowered than you realise you are. It started at Bloomberg through a number of women coming together and voicing their opinion, starting a support network, engaging with other leaders in the organisation, finding out who could help to move this agenda forward. Meet up with other women in your organisation, with other men in your organisation. Honestly, you are more powerful than you realise you are. It all starts at grassroots. Go do it.
And I would also say, sign the Menopause Workplace Pledge.
I have a challenge as part of my nugget. Well, you wanted to go last, so I was going to come to Sam last. Go on, Sam. I'll finish off. You go next.
It's just to build on what all of these wonderful people have said. It is the power of the collective. I think this is a very important point. It has to be inclusive, and we all have to come together to drive change, whether we're looking internally or externally through our business lens. But this has just been wonderful and so inspirational.
So here's my challenge to everyone. And I've been told that the clock is fast, so we've got time for Q&A. How wonderful is that? I challenge you all today. When somebody asks you, what have you done today? I'd like you to be really honest with the person that asks the question and say that I've been to an event where we've been talking about the menopause. You will be very surprised as to the answers and the responses that you get to that. I really do challenge you all to just be brave and open up conversations around the menopause. And I'd like to thank our amazing panel. As you say, all of us coming together. There's some brilliant people here in the room doing amazing things, really driving change at work. So thank you very much to everyone for coming along. Do we have, we've got time. Oh, sorry, Vanessa, hand over to you. Oh, there's lots of hands.
Okay, so I think there's lots of questions. So I think if we just do a couple of minutes questions, but also I am mindful there are a lot of menopause experts that are also in our audience. I couldn't have a panel because it just would have gone on forever. So I just really like to just give them a minute just to explain kind of who they are and what they do before we go into panels. So we have Dr. Marion Stewart with us. Do you want to just quickly explain what you do? Do you want to turn around and face the live stream?
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about the natural way.
Sorry to turn my back on you. So I have been working with women for the last 28 years to help them to manage their menopause naturally, based on published medical research. And I absolutely love this event. I love the fact that you're bringing all these amazing people together. And 28 years later, at last, I don't feel like I'm just a lost voice in the wilderness. So I think that's amazing. I do have two concerns, though, and those are, I actually live in America at the moment, and women in America don't want to talk about menopause in the workplace. That's the real issue. And I just feel like if we're just talking about the problem, we are actually further stigmatizing the situation, and women don't want to go there. So what we're doing is based on the research showing that women very often have low levels of nutritional deficiencies. In fact, the research shows that billions of women have low levels of nutrient. And also, obviously, their ovaries are retiring. They need what we call a midlife refuel. So I'm actually doing a TV series, or in fact 2 TV series in the US at the moment. One's called the Midlife Refuel Show, and it's just bringing together experts on things like brain fog and anxiety and all the different symptoms that we suffer, and really getting information out there to women to let them know that they've got science-based choices, because we want to have it as a passage of right in their 40s that they can have a midlife refuel in the workplace with no stigma. And then they won't need the desk fans. Obviously, some people choose to take HRT as well. Maybe they do the 2 things together, but at least they've got the information and they can make the choices. And my other concern is that the Mayo Clinic survey in the US shows that only 7% of doctors and gynecologists feel adequately educated to help women going through menopause. That is atrocious. And I don't know how much better it is here, but you know, we've got to change that, because it's all very well saying tell the woman to go to her doctor. But I mean, I've made a film with some patients who went to their doctor and were basically told to go and do your own research or given antidepressants when they didn't feel it was appropriate. It's just a mess out there. And I agree, men need to come to the party as well. They want to be supportive in and out of the workplace. So bravo, bravo to all of you for everything you're doing. And I love the fact that Jen Emma brought the brands together. You're doing all the research. It's just amazing. And you're doing the workplace and the training, and you're obviously spreading the word. And I'm so sorry to hear your stories. And I'd like to have a word with you afterwards as well about some research. Thank you.
So I'm going to hand over to Leslie, who's from Over the Bloody Moon. Is that right?
So thank you for the opportunity and amazing panel. I've really enjoyed this morning. So just to introduce Over the Bloody Moon, we are corporate menopause support providers, and also we are a social enterprise. So a lot of what we do goes back into our community. So the thing that I would like to promote to anybody that needs some support is to go onto our website and to join OTBM Club, which is completely free, and there's loads of different videos and resources that your colleagues or maybe you can benefit from. And the second thing that I'd like to invite you to do is, if you go onto the corporate bit, there's a drop down on menopause research, and my background is market research, so like Jen M, I've also conducted a study with Kantar, who have just done a very comprehensive study, very interesting findings to show that 74% of people that go through medically induced menopause describe that as severe or unbearable. And what that research has identified is 6 determining factors that will put people at greater risk through menopause. So do take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, as Sharon said, we've got time for a couple of questions. So I believe, Joy?
Thank you. I'm Joy Burnford, author of a book coming out in November called Don't Fix Women, so keep your eyes out for that. Janice, I have mentioned to you before, I'm a real advocate of what you're doing, and what I was wondering is if organisations are at kind of very early stages of thinking about menopause in the workplace, if I'm kind of advocating for you and for people to sign up to the pledge, what do they have to actually do? I know there's sort of they have to commit to doing certain things, but do you then go in and check what they're doing, or do you then keep going back in, you know?
We do. We each month we go back to each organisation, and we've just done our first survey with those organisations who've signed up, and 90% of the respondents said that by signing the pledge, it had given the workforce much more confidence that, you know, they could talk about their situation and expect support. We're doing another survey shortly, and then we will do another one at the end of the first year. So many of the companies that we're talking to are the larger organisations who probably already have some support in place, or they will go out and look to provide some specialist support, that they will have policies, that they will encourage what Pamela was talking about, which is the dialogue and the networks. One of the things that has come through actually in a lot of different research studies, including Women and Equalities, is that it's those networks, cafes, those internal platforms that people can go and talk to each other and get the support are really, really helpful. So we encourage companies to do that. But the next stage, I think for us, is looking at how we can encourage the small and medium enterprises to get involved, because they don't have the resources of some of the organisations. So that's next.
Amazing. And just to build on that, following on from the pledge is then the committed to being menopause friendly employers. So that's available via our menopause friendly website. You can go there, you can sign up to be members, and we provide ready-made resources, workshops, and total support. So if you've got nothing in place, it's all there within the membership. So, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't feel like you're on your own as an organisation. And there are some of our menopause-friendly employers in the room. If you'd like to talk to them about what's available, then do. And you know, the next stage from there is the actual accreditation. So an independent panel. Vanessa is one of our independent panel members, and they are absolutely looking for evidence, and it's a rigorous process. So it's not unachievable, and we have some brilliant already accredited menopause-friendly employers who are demonstrating what good looks like. And I'll pass.
I'm just mindful of time, so just before we close, and then maybe the speakers will hang around and we can have some more teas and coffees, and you guys on the live stream can have a think about kind of what we spoke about today. But there is one more lady in the room, and I remember coming across this lady probably 12, 15 years ago, talking about menopause then. I was even more frightened than when I was when I went to Dr. Marion's lunch. But I think it's important that we see a whole landscape of different people that can help us. So, Catherine Colas, do you want to, if I pass you the mic, just if you face the live stream and just tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Vanessa, and I remember that time as well. And subsequently, we worked with KPMG, who somebody also attended that event and remembered me sitting next to them. But I started dealing with my own menopause. Was a terrible story, 10 years of hell. I didn't realise I'd gone through menopause until I was post-menopause, resigned from my job, diagnosed with depression, self-diagnosed with bipolar. Madness, absolute madness. And I thought, is this it? Things have got to go on. I started the first training company ever that put workplace in menopause support in the workplace. We almost crashed going through COVID, but we rebranded, relaunched since then, and are experiencing the best time ever. And it's just so amazing to hear all these wonderful women talking about everything that's going on in the menopause field, and that just by having a conversation, as sorry, I've forgotten your name. As Sharon said, go back to the
to your workplace today and say, guess what? We've had a wonderful conversation this morning. This is what we've done today. We've spoken about menopause, and we need to carry on talking about it to normalise it. So we specialise in menopause training in the workplace, but for SMEs as well as large corporations, and we've been doing it for a very, very long time, and we'd be delighted to hear from you as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I'm actually going to close the event now. So we've heard from lots of different people today, and that's what We Are the City do. We bring people together. So, you know, we're not the experts in menopause. I say we have a resource page, which these guys are kindly populating for us at the moment. But, you know, it's a very important conversation. It's one I think we all need to take forward as well within our organisations. And every day, let's stop making it such a taboo. But I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the Pan Pacific London for hosting us today, to the wonderful Sharon Viber at Henpicked, to Pamela Hutchinson Obi Bloomberg, to Emma Campbell. Please do go and follow her on Instagram. She's so inspirational. And then to Janet Lindsay, Wellbeing of Women, Sign the Pledge. I'm going to put that as your middle name now. Sign the Pledge, Lindsay. To the wonderful Lee Chambers, who's joined us as well. I mean, Lee is also one of our Rising Star male champion winners. Can we just give it up for Lee? And then finally to San Simister, who is working with those brands. So, and a huge thank you to you for everything, for coming along and for getting this conversation going. And shout out to the live stream team at the back. Thank you very much. It's a wrap. Thank you for joining us. If you want to connect with any of these companies, we're happy to help you. Do go and have a look at that menopause page that I've said on We Are the City. Alternatively, email into info@, and we will happily connect you with all of our wonderful panellists. Thank you very much once again.